Well, continuing with the next delivery of the theme which we are actually debating, of which is the true Church of God, and after making we will say, a type of graphic to understand to some extent the passage of John 7:16, Jesus answered them and said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me." After being understood that we have to clear up a question, after getting the idea that in order to be able to resolve the question of which is the true Church of God, we have to go to the fundaments, or as others will say, the rudiments, because it is there where we have found out that everything started to be done badly, and that has obliged us to return to the beginnings to find or try to find where the problems are, and see if the results that we obtain, the results of the matter, can allow us to find the truth, which is, I consider, the most important thing. In order to be able to clear up the passage of John 7:16, we will not see it in a Kabbalistic way because we will enter in a series of matters that are not part of the subject, even though it will potentially make it more attractive, pretty much explosive, I will say, but in this moment is not the theme of discussion. So in order to solve the equation of the question that we have in this passage of John 7:16, we will use another passage that has to do with Kabbalistic and has to do in some degree with mysticism, but this is neither the idea of the teaching and of the study. Says John 14:24 the following: "He that loveth me not keepeth not my sayings, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's which sent me." I'm going to repeat it because the text of John 14:24 is a text that, if analyzed in depth, it will give us a series of teachings which I believe will be difficult and complicated. It says, "He that loveth me not keepeth not my sayings, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's which sent me." With this text that we have been using, a series of questions are generated to us that will come to complicate even more the panorama that we have before us, because Jesus the Messiah is putting to us a series of conditions that in a Kabbalistic way we understand belong to a rule, and that rule must be fulfilled. On the contrary, if it does not fulfill, it generates a series of uncertainties. But the most, we will say, transcendental, we believe everything written there is transcendental, but the most transcendental to us is our search today that has to do with this revelation that Jesus the Messiah does in relation to this ministry, teaching that the Messiah brought to the earth, and this calls our attention because according to the Messiah, according to what the Messiah tells us, the Messiah between lines is telling several things to us, but we will only take from that many things only one for the purpose of this study, and is that the Messiah in John 14:24 is revealing to us that the structure, that the architecture, that the design of this new faith comes from the Father, comes from God Himself. So this generates us a series of uncertainties, a series of questionings, of doubts, of questions regarding the manifestation or the revelation that Jesus the Messiah is giving us. Because in the becoming of the religions, it is taken as a fact that He came to represent someone, but that His words and His doctrines were His. But according to the Messiah, He's telling us that the words and the doctrine is from the Father. This calls our attention very powerfully because the Messiah comes to a Jewish religion, and Jews by nature and characteristic define their faith as coming from God. But now Jesus the Messiah reveals us, relates us, tells us, teaches us that this new doctrine, because it is new, this new teaching, this new faith, these new words, put the term that you like, come from the Father. We in the Church have God Father within His functions, attributes, faculties, and we can say many things. We have Him as Creator. So the Messiah is saying us in few words that the faith, that the doctrine, that the teaching, that His words come from the Father. So in other words, we have to understand that all the architecture that we have tried to devise in all these centuries and millenniums is bad. The base of the doctrine of the Father should have been respected. That is doing to a generation of people a dramatic and radical change, because it's announcing, sharing, talking, revealing a new faith that detaches itself totally from the traditional faith that these actors had in the moment that the Messiah came. So this makes us to talk, to think, to discern where these words want to take us. What does the Messiah want to tell us in John 14:24? Kabbalistically, we already know that it is a rule, and that it is a rule that has a fulfillment and a non-fulfillment. The fulfillment derives in something, and the non-fulfillment in another thing. But do not want to enter in that, because we will deviate from the main topic that has impact. What has impacted, surprised me, is that the Messiah is revealing us that the Father is the architect and the ideologist of the new faith. And this new faith is being given, is being shared, is being deposited by Him to a new generation of people, so that they untie from the traditional religion to follow a different, a distinct path. And that calls our attention very powerfully, because if we contrast the Jewish faith with the new faith, we found that there are extraordinary radical changes in relation to a series of conceptions, thoughts, ideas that come to shine through a new doctrine, and only by knowing that it generates us a series of complicated situations. Believe that these words in John 14:24 have a very profound impact. Obviously, that people sometimes cannot capture the 100% of the revelation, because some people are in one thing, others are in other things, and another people are in another thing. But this text is strong, because for the first time in history, in a clear and evident way, it shows us that the Father and Son are immersed, are determined, that they took a decision, that they have standardized criteria in relation with this new faith, and this brings a series of extraordinary and terrible implications, because they come to tell us, even though they do not say it, they come to tell us a number of things that possibly we do not have even the capacity to advert how far do they go, or what is the limit of this. We always invite you to write to us, the last church 7 in number, okay, gmail.com. You can also visit our webpage, churchofgod.tk. There you can take notice of the work that we are doing, and can share with us a series of teachings. Believe that this matter, as we are carrying it, begins to have its effects in its results, because when faith was defined, it was sold with very strange ideas, to such a point that they have a great likeness with the old faith, the Jewish faith. And we always ask ourselves, why do they have such a likeness? But according to the passage, what we are reading is that the true faith was destroyed, corrupted, and degenerated. That is why we need to make this analysis, this study, because we have found, we will say, a very strong fundament that shows us that this faith in which we have been believing and has been believed for generations has been a corrupted and disturbed faith. So now it corresponds to us to return to the rudiments or the principles that rule this faith and elaborate a teaching according to the words of Jesus the Messiah, that are in conclusion the words of God. That is why we will continue this study to be able to find more truths and be fundamenting and be able to respond at the end which is the true Church of God. Beforehand, thank you very much.